So we are having really honored guest today, Mr. Takayuki Urade, who works for the JICA project to research on the Mongolian capital market. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. So my first question will start with your experience in which organizations you have been working. Your professional experience.
Okay, well, it's a long story. Maybe I should compress it to a shorter version. I'm currently working with the think tank called the Japan Economic Research Institute, which is the research arm of Development Bank of Japan. Actually, DBJ has a long history of supporting DBM in the past. So, and before joining JERI, Japan Economic Research Institute, I had almost 7 years of experience in banking sector and 7 years experience in investment banking sector and another 7 years in ODA businesses. So I would say my background is pretty much balanced to extend a support to a project like this.
So you have just introduced yourself as you were working as a consultant at the JICA project that does the research on Mongolian capital market potential. So please tell us how much potential does Mongolian capital market has in order to step up and reach other international markets?
Well, first of all, in addition to doing research, we are now in the phase of providing actual technical assistances to Mongolian government and the stakeholders, private sector companies, including underwriters and broker-dealers and potential issuers. And we see a great potential in Mongolian capital markets because until now, the financial market has been almost dominated by banking sector, and now it's time to diversify from the company's point of view to the financing sources. And in order to do that, capital markets should play a greater role than now.
Yes, we do realize that the banking sector is really huge. And in that regard, what kind of maybe legal environment should be adjusted in order to provide the balance between those financial institutions?
Well, actually, thanks to the effort by Mongolian government, especially FRC and Mongol Bank and Ministry of Finance, legal environment is improving very rapidly. And now this is a time to do the implementation to vitalize the capital market. So I would say in order to do that, hands-on kind of technical assistance should play a great role.
So in regards with Mongolian legal environment, it's, as you have said, improving really rapidly. But then how much regulation does, for example, Tokyo Stock Exchange has in terms of accepting the issuing of the stocks by Mongolian companies? Probably some of them will have like dual listing.
Well, as you may know, the requirement by Tokyo Stock Exchange is pretty high, much higher than MSE. But at the same time, they are now open to foreign issuers. And well, in order for Mongolian companies to be accepted in overseas market, including Tokyo, well, it's quite important to be in line with the global kind of requirements for listed companies. And it's a good news that the MSE and FRC is also trying to enhance the quality of the requirements for even listing companies within Mongolia at MSE. So ultimately and idealistically, these requirements should converge in the future.
So you have said that Mongolian companies are developing in terms of their financial potential really rapidly, and also the government agencies are also supporting them. So next question will be about the EPA that was signed between governments of Japan and Mongolia.
Right.
So how much that will influence or already having impact, positive impacts on accepting Mongolian companies on financial market, capital market in Japan?
Right. The EPA and the biggest implication of EPA is to make it easier for the companies on both sides to do business with each other. And as far as our project, our assistance is concerned, potential issuer companies, now it's easier for them to sell their goods to Japan, for example, which means there should be a greater need to finance both on Mongolian and a Japanese side. So, I mean, the actual impact is being materialized, and it should be materialized going forward. But financing should be developed in parallel with this movement of the real sector activities.
So the next question will be, for Mongolian companies, even to be listed on MSC Mongolian Stock Exchange, even if they have been already listed and already selling their stocks on the exchange market, some of them are not really complying to the requirements or the regulations, and some of them have really limited access to their financial information. So how much improvement should they do, or the government should do?
Well, just looking at the listed companies and the brokerage firms, registered firms, I would say there are a little too many of them in the market. And the first thing that should take place is probably to really focus on the good ones, eligible for doing business, eligible for being listed. And 200 plus listed companies for this size of market is probably too many, I would say. Same for the security companies.
So on the other side, the government is now privatizing some of its assets.
Right.
So how much potential do those companies have? Because some are calling for the crowdfunding and so on. So how much potential for, let's say, citizens financially those have?
Right. Actually, in our technical assistance program, we are also helping privatization of state-owned companies. And it should take a while until many of the SOEs are privatized to reduce the burden on the fiscal budget. But the general directions should be, greater number of state-owned companies should be, the ownership should be handed over to the private sector. That's a general direction, I should say. And if that happens, there should be a greater role in the private sector to run the big businesses.
So there is a really huge potential for private businesses to step up into bigger, let's say, outreach in their business, right?
And the potential for investors, the biggest issue, a challenge for Mongolian economy is that it's got only a limited number of investors, thin investor base, I should say. And in order to mobilize the fund, with the potential retail investors, it's critically important to raise the awareness of these potential investors and stimulate their interest into the capital markets.
So we have talked really extensively on the companies and the regulation and the environment. So let's end our conversation interview with how much impact or how much awareness do Mongolian citizens have on maybe probably growing the capital market in Mongolia?
Right.
Are we enough educated, or how much work should be done?
Right. Mongolian private individuals are managing their money in a very smart way, in that they put everything in the bank deposit.
Yeah.
But going forward, in order for the capital markets to attract this money, I would say it's critical to stabilize the inflation and maybe lower the interest rate for the bank deposit. I mean, it cannot be done artificially, but in order for that to happen, probably the macroeconomic management should be very much important to stabilize the price, inflation, to make investments in capital markets very much attractive. So everything is interrelated. I mean, it's not only a matter of capital markets. Capital markets development is deeply related with the stabilizing the whole economy and the performance of the banking sector as well.
So thank you very much for your time, and I hopefully will meet you tomorrow at the forum,
Right.
because we will be also attending. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.